It was just announced that 41 out of 44 of the Indiana Fever games will be nationally televised. So this is great news not only for the Indiana Fever, but also for the WNBA, right? So why is everyone upset?
Recall when WNBA athletes fervently implored networks for the broadcast of their games. For years, they advocated for visibility, media representation, and national esteem. Presently, the Indiana Fever is afforded 41 nationally televised games, and this has become contentious. The hypocrisy is astonishing. The same individuals who previously demanded increased coverage are now lamenting its excess. However, the statistics are indisputable. The Fever games featuring Caitlin Clark shattered viewing records, resulting in sold-out arenas and necessitating venue alterations.
I do not think a lot of people are understanding just how big that is. Nearly every single game of the Indiana Fever will be nationally broadcast.
Why is success now perceived as a betrayal? Furthermore, it is astonishing that the very executives who previously disregarded the WNBA are now competing for the rights to broadcast Fever games. This shift is not indicative of a newfound interest in women's sports. Rather, it is a manifestation of pure business motives driven by financial incentives.
I cannot remember a time that any other team in sports history, we're talking about NBA, we're talking about NFL, it is no secret that the Indiana Fever are by far the most popular team in the WNBA.
Allow me to elucidate why networks are eagerly broadcasting Fever games on national television. When Indiana confronted Chicago last June, an astonishing 3.3 million viewers were captivated. Consider that for a moment. These figures surpassed the viewership of numerous NBA regular season games, and this was not merely an anomaly or isolated occurrence.
And I'm so glad that we are finally just, I don't know if admitting it is the right word, but they're finally acting on it. And you guys, I'm happy that they're acting on it because this news is not only just good for the Indiana Fever and Indiana Fever fans, it is good for the entire WNBA.
The playoff matchup against Connecticut, nearly 3 million spectators glued to their screens, the WNBA All-Star Game, featuring Clark, set a record with 3.44 million viewers, making it the most watched WNBA broadcast in ESPN's history. These figures transcend typical metrics for women's sports, compelling executives to reevaluate the potential of basketball broadcasting.
So if we look at the highest viewed games, so with 3.3 million, it was the Indiana Fever versus the Chicago Sky on June 23rd. And then we had 2.97 million, and that was the Indiana Fever versus the Connecticut Sun, and that was during the playoffs. And then we also had with 3.44 million, that was the WNBA All-Star Game. And that was the most watched WNBA program in ESPN history.
What is particularly revealing is how the Fever unequivocally dominated the ratings charts, securing the top 4 most viewed regular games of the entire season. The only broadcast that surpassed them was Game 5 of the finals, which was unrelated to the Fever. Consider this. A team that did not even reach the championship round generated more viewership than nearly every other matchup in the league.
The game against the Chicago Sky, the home opener on ABC. The game against the New York Liberty, also on ABC. How about a Tuesday at 8 p.m. on ESPN against the New York Liberty? They are playing all of the teams in the WNBA also on national television.
Herein lies the point of heightened intrigue. The Fever weren't even winning that much. They were merely an ordinary team last season, yet still packed arenas and drew massive TV audiences. This completely shatters the concept that fans only watch successful teams. What we're witnessing is the pure star power effect. Fans want to see Caitlin Clark play, win, or lose.
They proved that all of last season with everyone against them, with everyone trying to diminish the wave that was happening, the Clarkonomics that were happening, the Caitlin Clark effect that was happening.
Networks aren't making these judgments based on feelings or fairness. They're looking at cold hard viewership data that correlates directly to advertising dollars. When executives see numbers like these, the decision to broadcast 41 out of 44 Fever games nationally isn't favoritism, it's just smart business. They literally can't afford not to show these games when millions of fans are demanding it.
So when we talk about these networks that are picking up these games, I think a lot of people also don't realize these networks are choosing the games that they would like to have. These networks are not thinking about hurting feelings. These networks are thinking about how much money can we bring in for ourselves as well.
Therefore, when we discuss these networks that are acquiring these games, I believe that many people are also unaware that these networks are selecting the games that they want to have. These networks are not considering hurting feelings. Rather, they are considering how much money we can make for ourselves. Additionally, we are seeing the market reacting in real time to. This phenomenon is not being created by consumer demand networks. Rather, they are merely following the audience's current path, and the data regarding that audience's desired destination is extremely apparent.
We have ABC, NBA TV, Prime Video, CBS, ESPN, 1, 2, 3, and as you can see, these games, May through September, there will be games on national TV.
These trends in viewership are drastically altering what networks thought was feasible for women's basketball. The ceiling has been broken, and now there is a frantic rush to take advantage of it. For this reason, 41 Fever games will be broadcast nationally, an unprecedented move that is shocking the league.
I'm trying to say, it's common sense. I don't get it. I don't get the pushback, and I'm so happy that this is happening. This is something we should all be celebrating. We should be celebrating this, whether it was the Indiana Fever doing it, whether it was the New York Liberty doing it, whether it was the Phoenix Mercury doing it. I don't care what team. This is great news for women's basketball, period.
The television. At least 6 WNBA teams have already announced that they will be moving their games to arenas 3 times larger, specifically when the Fever comes to town. This isn't just about adding a few extra seats. We're talking about completely abandoning their regular home courts for massive venues that can accommodate the tidal wave of fans. Revolution is just the beginning. Teams are physically changing where games are played because of the Caitlin Clark effect. Remember those intimate 5,000-seat arenas that used to be the WNBA standard?
I also wanted to mention that a lot of these WNBA teams are moving venues when the Indiana Fever come to town. There have been 6 teams that have changed venues when the Indiana Fever come to play. All of these arenas are selling out.
The Tiny makes it clear that this is all about Clark, though, and it's like watching someone with chocolate all over their face insist they didn't eat the cookies. Some team owners are attempting to conceal what's actually happening. Can you believe the Atlanta Dream owner actually claimed they were moving to a larger venue due to a scheduling conflict?
It has to be something where if it's pride, if it's ego, we talked about how the Atlanta Dream owner said that they were moving venues only because of a scheduling conflict. It wasn't because the Indiana Fever were coming in town, like they made up some weird excuse.
These teams that have played at modest arenas for years are suddenly hiring 15,000-seat venues for Fever games and pretending it's just some crazy coincidence. What we're seeing is this odd situation where owners are secretly trying to cash in on Clark's popularity while publicly downplaying her impact. They want the money but don't want to admit why they're receiving it.
So on top of the viewership numbers on television, you are also getting the in-attendance ticket sales for all of these games, not only at Gainbridge, because I've told you guys I've tried to buy tickets for the Fever games in Indiana and it's nearly impossible to get tickets that I want. Those are all sold out.
And getting tickets to see the Fever at home, good luck with that. Indiana's home games are reportedly selling out faster than any team in league history. Supporters who've been able to casually acquire tickets for years are now finding it nearly hard to secure seats. The demand is completely unprecedented.
And then every single road game is also sold out to the fact that they're having to move venues to arenas that hold 3 times the amount of people than the ones that they were playing in before. I would love to see it get to a point where every single team in the WNBA, if they have the resources for it, move their venue to a bigger venue when the Indiana Fever come in town.
It may seem like all of this is good news for the league. More fans, larger venues, sold-out games, but some fans and even players are suggesting that people boycott Fever games. Can you imagine that this is the exact opposite of what would actually help the league grow? It would be like finally getting the job promotion you've been aiming for years and then asking to be demoted.
You truly have to get to a point. If you care about the growth of the game, if you don't care about the growth of the game and you don't care about every other player in the WNBA, then don't change a thing. Keep it to the small arena. Don't change a thing. Don't promote that game. Boycott watching the Indiana Fever games. You are only doing that if you don't care about anyone else.
What these naysayers are missing is the most evident advantage when 15,000 fans turn up instead of 5,000, which means 10,000 more people will see every player on both teams. 10,000 potential new fans will find players they may not have previously seen. And those fans may come for Clark, but depart as admirers of other celebrities they see playing alongside her.
When they play in these arenas where there are 15 to 20,000 people in the stands, they are in front of people that they haven't been in front of before. That is an opportunity for all of us fans to get to know all the players on the court, all of the players in the WNBA, to pick new favorite players, to pick other teams that we want to follow along.
As teams rush to larger venues and pocket the profits, a bizarre contradiction is unfolding behind the scenes. After years of begging for national attention, certain WNBA players and fans are now actually upset about getting exactly what they wanted. It's like watching someone dying of thirst finally reach water, only to argue about which cup they should drink from.
Momentum is still going, and dare I say, the momentum seems to be even crazier than it was in year one. The Clark crazies, the Caitlin Clark effect, seems to be crazier than year one. More people are getting on board. More people are watching women's basketball. More people are watching women's college basketball. The momentum is here. Do not slow the momentum because of ego.
Think about it. For decades, WNBA players have been speaking out about the unfair coverage gap. They've been practically begging networks to place their games in prime time slots. Now that it's finally happening, there's this bizarre response brewing within the league
broadcast.
itself.
That is something that the WNBA players, WNBA media, WNBA fans have been begging for so many years. So many people have been saying the WNBA will grow if we just have more access to it, make the games available, put them in prime television spots, do all of these things. Now it is happening, and it is happening with the Indiana Fever.
That also means that all of the other teams will also be on national TV. Some players and fans are calling out the Fever for getting special treatment with their nationally televised games. But what exactly do they expect networks to do? Ignore the millions of viewers who are clearly showing what they want to watch? That's not how broadcasting works. It's a business driven by viewership, not a charity designed to give equal airtime regardless of audience interest.
I feel like what a lot of people who aren't fans of the Indiana Fever or don't want to see this happening, they're mad about it, but they're also not realizing, because there's so many Indiana Fever games on national TV, that also means that all of the other teams will also be on national.
What's even more shocking is that some critics are actively trying to sabotage the league's growth. They're encouraging fans should illegally stream games instead of watching official broadcasts. Do you realize how ridiculous that is? When fans pirate games instead of watching them through legitimate methods, it directly hurts the league's ability to show networks that viewership is growing. Those figures are what justify future broadcasting deals, the very thing WNBA players have been battling for.